We all had to be a beginner at leadership, and I would argue we should never stop being a beginner. I think, leadership changes. Leadership changes so often. If you even think just COVID changed the workplace in unimaginable ways, like ways that, we couldn't even conjure up before COVID. And that's all happened in the last 5-6 years. And so if you're still leading in the same way you were even 5 or 6 years ago, your leadership is outdated and therefore you're a beginner again. This is the reason why I called my blog In the Making. If you're not subscribed, inthemakingleadership.com. I called it In the Making because we are always in the making as leaders. Like, we should never, ever, ever be the finished article. And I think there is kind of this like beauty in always wanting to be coached, always wanting to feel like we have to improve and test out new things, improve our leadership. And so this episode is going to be the beginner's guide to management. But wherever the hell you are in your leadership role, I think you can learn lots from today's episode. And hey, by the way, welcome to The Boardroom, the podcast where we open up all the conversations that normally happen behind those closed boardroom doors at work. The place that I wrote the notes for this episode from, and as I said, we never use scripts, but I always have little bullet points written out so that I can refer to them and make sure that I'm not just going off on an absolute tangent all episode. But the place that I wrote these notes from is, if I could go back to 21-year-old Heather, even like 19-year-old Heather, because I talk about my Harrods job a lot, but what I don't talk about is I had a job before that. I was a supervisor on the Holland and Barrett, of all places, Holland and Barrett shop floor in Big Market in Newcastle. Big up if anyone's ever been there. Then you'll know that's not really a big flex, but it was a great place. And I was a supervisor on the Holland and Barrett shop floor. And I just wish, if I could go back to me at that like 19, 20-year-old Heather and hand me like a piece of paper with just the scribbles on to say, just so you know, here's the things I wish you could know right now that you're probably only going to learn with experience, but I just wish I could hand it to you. These would be it. And so this is going to try and encompass like the full beginning. If we wanted to begin as a manager and be great in a management role, then this is the episode for you. And this will be a great episode if you are going into a new management role, you're starting a new business, you're about to step into your first management role, you're going into a new management role of a new team, you've been promoted, I don't know, or you just want a refresher and you want to make sure that you are being the best you possibly can be in 2026. This episode is for you. So the very first place to start is this concept of being an accidental manager. And I think this plays into imposter syndrome a lot. So people tend to say, we promote people into management positions, whether it's the first time or the third time. And we're usually like, they were really good at that one job, that one thing. So we promoted them. But it is now like a whole new set of skills. You go from managing yourself to having to manage other people. You go from being an individual contributor where your value is measured by what you do in a day to your value now being measured by the people around you. And most new managers mess it up. We do. I messed it up. I avoided the conversations. I didn't delegate. I messed it up. And I messed it up because I hadn't done the learning yet, and no one was really there to support me. I think the stats are still only 15% of new managers ever get any training, and we rarely get the support, whether it's psychological support or actual sort of coaching courses support. And so if you feel like you've been thrown into this role and you feel new, I just want you to know that that's normal. It's okay. And if you feel a sense of imposter syndrome around you're about to manage friends, you're about to manage peers, you're about to manage people who are older than you, all of that is completely normal. No one feels a sense of calm and complete safety going into that. So that's the first thing. I want you to relax your shoulders a little bit because you're going to be great. You've been picked for this role because someone already saw something brilliant in you. You don't have to magically become a new person overnight. You don't have to, change how you show up, how you speak. You don't have to all of a sudden become strict or change your tone. You are already enough. It's now just about us fine-tuning some skills. I think when I was in those early years of management roles, I did always in the back of my mind think, I have to be a different person. I have to be a stricter version of me, or I have to be a tougher version of me. I have to be someone who never cries and never gets upset. And when I was working at Harrods, we had one of our shops. So obviously Harrods is in Knightsbridge, but we had another shop thing that we used to have to work in occasionally up in Marylebone. And I remember working in the Marylebone shop in the first week, and at lunchtime, I was just it was like my first week, I'd fresh new moved to London. I was feeling really overwhelmed, I was feeling quite lonely. And at lunchtime, I just walked off to one of the parks nearby, and I sat at lunch and I just cried into my sandwich because I felt so exhausted. I felt so lonely at trying to put on this facade of being a completely different person to who I actually was. And I really wish at that point someone had turned around to me and just said, Heather, you don't need to prove anything. Of course, we need to keep fine-tuning these skills. We need to keep growing ourselves to be brilliant for other people. But we don't have to be magically someone else overnight. Who you are right now is enough. Something else I really wish someone had have said to me was leadership is just a set of skills. It is not charisma. It is not like confidence. You are not born with it. I am a firm believer of you are made. You're not born with the skills or not the skills. I think, of course, some people have like a leg up. Maybe they're naturally a bit more confident and out there, and therefore they can communicate their ideas better. But I don't believe, from all of my experience and from being the person who wasn't confident, wasn't charismatic, I don't believe leadership is something you're born with. I think it's a set of skills you have to have the courage to put into place, but it's a skill set, it's a toolkit. You can learn those things, start practicing them, have the courage to practice them, and then become great at it. And so right now, if you're someone who is like looking at all these leaders around you and you're like, God, I can never be like them. You know, they're so loud and quick-witted and they seem to have an answer for everything. Like I remember one of my biggest insecurities was I was worried that I would, you know, if you like give someone difficult feedback and then they come back to you with something, like maybe they make an excuse or they get defensive, I would always think, oh shit, like I'm not going to look like a good leader if I don't have a very quick-witted comeback and I can't like back myself. It's almost going to show that there's holes in my story and I'm not going to know what to do. And it was that's the type of imposter syndrome, but it was that was holding me back because I was thinking I'm not made for this because I'm not quick and I'm blah, blah, blah. All bollocks. You can absolutely learn it, practice it, and it does just take the reps. You've got to put the reps in. You've got to have the courage to implement the skill. And once you've done that, you can be a great leader, I promise. The first principle of management I want to talk about in this episode is the principle of moving away from being the doer to the thinker, the director, the strategic person. I think a trap that a lot of us stay stuck in for so long is we continue, because we were so good at the job, we stay being good at the job, you know? It's like the safe, easy thing to do. And we also never really hand it over because we're like, we don't want to delegate because we're like, oh, what if they don't do it as well as me, as fast as me, whatever. Their standards aren't as high. So we keep on to it. We hold on to it tight. When we first go into a management role, one of the key principles you have to get your head around is it is no longer about the value you bring to the table. No longer does it matter like how many quick tick tasks you get done in a day. That's not your job anymore. Your job is to multiply the impact of the, 2, 3, 10, 20 people that are in your team. It's to make sure that you as their leader create the conditions that are motivating, that are engaging, that they feel safe in. They feel safe to experiment. They feel clear, like they have clarity around what they're doing, that, you know, they can keep pushing, they can move the team forward with their actions, with their ticking and doing. And I think the reason a lot of us stay stuck is mainly because of that. We've moved from being the really high achieving individual contributor into this role, usually quite quickly. And you never take a step back when you're new into that leadership position to go, okay, how do I now delegate the doing so I've got time for the leading and time for the strategic stuff? And I think just to give you some like practical tips of how I've done this is just being so ruthless with delegating, like making sure that you never just fall back on the idea of I'll just do it myself. Like always delegate, even when it feels like so painful because you think I literally could do this in 20 seconds and it'd be done. Making sure you take time to delegate. And when you do delegate, take time to explain the context and the purpose behind that task so that your team can start to connect the dots and really understand why it's important and they can like add their own spin on it. That's one of the best ways that you're going to free up your own time. And also moving into coaching and not just fixing. So you never want to become the type of manager who is just the fixer. You never want to be the type of manager where your team just come to you with, hi, I need this question answering. Quick question. Can you tell me this, blah, blah, blah. You just become, again, like an information shifter, and your team never learn to think for themselves. Of course we want to support our team. Like, of course, we want to help get them the information that they need. But when we get asked a question, if they truly, because our team have come to us for support, try and coach them instead of just fix it. So instead of just giving them the answer straight away, try asking them questions. What do you think we could have done here? How could, where could we find this information? What do you think the best outcome is? And if they truly don't know, then take the time to explain your thinking behind it instead of just telling them what to do. Like, look, this is where my thinking would go. This is where I'd start to look. This is the YouTube videos I would watch. This is the podcasts I would listen to. I don't know. This is how I would find the answer. And just make sure you're not just doing the lazy thing, which is to answer and fix immediately. That's how we're going to move into that like more strategic non-doer mode. Something else I wish, that maybe me crying into my sandwich in the Marylebone Park, I wish that someone had actually slapped me around the face and said this to me. Stop trying to win the approval. Start trying to win the respect. I wish someone had said that to me. Stop trying to win the approval, start trying to earn the respect. Because in leadership, truthfully, guys, like, not everyone is going to like what you've got to say. You've got to make decisions that not everyone's going to like. You've got to relay information that not everyone is going to like. You have got to be quick. You've got to hold the standards. You've got to hold people accountable. You've got to inspire people. You've got to sometimes get people to do things that they don't want to do, and you've got to do those things as well yourself. And I think the longer we just try to be liked and play that game of how do I win friends, how do I, like just get as many like tokens in my pocket as possible, the further down the line we push the opportunity to build respect, because those tough calls, those hard decisions that we have to make are usually the ones that people need. And even though if it might piss them off in the moment, they might need it in the long run. And it also, I'm really wary of people who don't have a backbone. It used to be cute and fun and like, people who would just say yes to everything and be really helpful all the time and keep everything moving really fast. Now I'm just wary of those people, because I'm like, but what do you stand for? Because if you don't stand for anything, you will fall for anything. And are you then, I guess, if you're just saying yes to me, are you actually standing up for me in front of other groups? Are you going to your seniors and standing up for me there? Or are you just saving face and kind of standing down when you get there too? So we have to move from people pleasing, and even just having difficult conversations, such an important skill you're going to have to learn as a manager, and we'll talk about it properly in a second. But having difficult conversations will not win you the approval. You're not going to be liked if you have difficult conversations with people. It's not nice. It's not fun. People don't want to hear it, but it will win you the long-term respect when people know where they stand with you. And this is bringing me into difficult conversations. So I wish someone had whacked me around the head with this one, let's say. Those difficult conversations that you're avoiding, Heather, 19-year-old Heather, the small ones, like people saying slightly unnecessary things, or people turning up just slightly late to their shift, or people's work just being slightly subpar. Those small mini conversations that you're avoiding are going to come back to haunt you in just a couple of months' time when people leave, because they see that you're not dealing with a toxic performer. Because nothing loses you great employees faster than them watching you tolerate a bad one. And you're currently tolerating the bad one, and this is going to cost you a lot in the future. Or, like avoiding those small difficult conversations about someone else's attitude or someone else's performance, because we think, oh, they're going to get defensive, they're going to come back and argue with me. But it's still a conversation that needs to be had, and I'm still going to hold my ground. So this is something we have to learn when we're new to leadership. The quicker you can stop avoiding that conflict and those difficult conversations, the better. The better of a leader you're going to become. And I know the easiest thing for us all to do is avoid them. The easiest thing is, just to push them down the line. None of us like conflict, but we have to. It's so important. We just have to have them. And that will also build your respect too. Now let's talk about some of the more practical parts of management. So Clarity. Now, I say clarity because your team have to all be so clear on exactly what it is that makes them successful. Whether it's through roles and responsibilities docs, whether it's through a really clear set of KPIs. As a leader, it is your job to make sure that our team feel so clear on exactly what it is that makes them successful and what they should be working on day to day. Now, what I do with the team, we've only got a small team. So what I do with the team right now is make sure that everyone, so you know when you have like the job ads, so when I ever ask managers if they have roles and responsibilities docs in their team, they always say to me, oh, well, kind of, I've got like a job ad, that we used, and that's kind of exists maybe from last year. So the job ad's a good place to start because that's the role that you hired for. That's the roles and responsibilities that you hired for. The problem is that will change. It will shift and change over the months and years that people are with you. And their role will change, their responsibilities, their pay will change, where they fit in the team will change, their skills, their confidence in certain things, etc. And so the best way to manage this, what I do now is we have the roles and responsibilities job ad. For the first 3 months when they're being onboarded, we work towards training them up in everything that's within that job ad. So that kind of is like a reference point for their training. When they finish their onboarding, so they get 3 months in, the idea is now they own their roles and responsibilities doc. So it's now theirs to own. And every 3 months, when we do our 90-day one-on-one, we sit together and we look at that roles and responsibilities doc and we go, okay, what's changed? What needs adding in? What needs removing? How has your role grown? What do we need to take away from you because it's getting too much? What should we upskill you in a little bit more? And this creates clarity. And at the top of those docs, so the way that I lay out my roles and responsibilities docs is at the top, you want purpose. Purpose, I always start with purpose, start with the why, start with the context. The purpose is always, I guess just what is the purpose of this role? And it tends to be like a quite inspiring statement or paragraph to say, this is the reason this role exists within the business. This is what you're driving. Then you want a list of success measures. So this person is successful in their role if they do X, Y, and Z. And the success measures, they don't have to be like full-blown KPIs, numbers, etc. They can just be like the standards of social media are kept high. The standard of our culture is kept high, like having these high standards in certain areas. Then you would probably have a list of KPIs, and then underneath that you would have a list of their roles and responsibilities, so the actual things that they do. And then every 3 months you want to review that with them to make sure that it's staying in line, to make sure that you're not adding bloat in. And it just helps create that clarity. And then you can also create clarity obviously with your meeting rhythms, so with like doing your KPI meetings and etc. But it's just very hard, I think, for the whole system of managing a team to work, as in people like pushing towards targets and trying hard and experimenting and being fulfilled and challenged, etc. If they don't know exactly what makes them successful. And maybe this is my micromanager control freak brain that's like, we have to have clarity over everything. But what I've learned over the last 10 years is it creates like a real sense of camaraderie. Like people know what their part is in the team, what role they play, how their role fits into and improves the team drastically. And so find a way to get people clarity as much over their role as much as you possibly can. Now, we can't talk about being a manager without talking about one-on-ones. We all love one-on-ones. So one-on-ones, okay, everyone has their own different way of doing it. Some people don't do them at all. Some managers don't do them at all. Now, for me, the one-on-one system is so powerful and important because it does, it's so many different things I could talk about here, but like it shows your team that you care. It shows your team that you're listening, that you are carving out time in your week, in your month, in your whatever, to ask them questions about them and write those things down and then go and do something about those things. Like whether it's, sometimes it's them that needs to put the actions into place. Now, for the purpose of this episode, I'm going to give you my kind of overarching layout for one-on-ones and how I run them. But I'm also going to put a link in the show notes to go and download. I have like a PDF. It's completely free. You can go download it. That just lays out like my exact one-on-one framework and all the agendas with the exact questions that I use. It's so good, and I'm not going to go through all of it for the purpose of today. I'm going to just give you a real like lay of the land. So some big mistakes that managers make with one-on-ones are cancelling them, are not just shutting up and listening to your team. Like, you need to actually give them space, not preparing, so like not bringing the right questions to make sure we point them in the right direction. We quite often just turn them into like a status update. And all of this can be avoided by just having a really simple, brilliant written down system. So my system is every fortnight I have a 20-minute meeting with every member of the team that we don't have an agenda for. So that is just a space for them to bring whatever they need, whatever support they want from me. And if I need anything from them, it's just a really important space that's held. And that space essentially replaces the my door is always open. Because I think traditionally we've been like, oh, my door is always open, door is always open. But actually, like, it's not, unless people feel super safe and carve out the time to come and give you the feedback and get the support, which just, it's hard for them to do, then they won't do it. I think we have to carve out that space to make sure they have time for it. And it just sort of signals like, I'm listening. It signals as a manager, I'm listening to you and I want to hear what you've got to say. Then every 90 days, I do like a more in-depth one-on-one with them. So this is the one that I've got an agenda for. You can find the free download in the show notes. But every 90 days, I spend 90 minutes with them, asking them some deeper questions. So things like, what is your biggest fear right now? Things like, if you were to hand your notice in tomorrow, why would it be? And a lot of people, some people find those questions a bit weird. Whenever I post about this on the internet, I get lots of comments on TikTok. They're like, I hate managers who try too hard, like, just let me do my job. I don't want to tell you what my biggest fear is. But 99% of people who use it have really positive feedback from their team. And they're like, finally, my team are happy that I'm asking them the right questions, that I'm giving them the opportunity to tell me these things. And guys, like, if your team don't want to answer the question, they don't have to. If if you say, what is your biggest fear right now, they don't have to go on a deep, dark route of telling you like what they're truly fearing. They could just say, oh, I'm a bit worried about, this new task that I've got to do. Like, they can go as deep or as surface level as they want to. It's completely on them. The questions like open up loads of room and availability for if they want to go really deep, which a lot of people do. I think you'll find a lot of them do. Or if they want to stay more surface level. And then the last one to mention is just, I make sure we have an annual salary review, which goes without saying. Just even if it's, even if you're in a business where you can't give huge salary reviews right now, just still have the review, like still speak to them, still open up the conversation about their salary. Don't avoid it just because you can't put it up. Like, hear them out, listen to it. Even if you can't do something about it, still give them the opportunity to talk to you about it, because the thing is that they're talking about it. They're talking about it to their friends, to their family, potentially to their other colleagues. So make the space for them to talk about it to you. Even if it feels negative and awkward because you can't do anything about it, at least you're on the front foot with having that conversation. And you're able to very clearly, transparently say to them, look, I'm going to push for you. I'm going to advocate you as best as I can. But just so you know, like, we're struggling with this across the board. And then you keep the conversation with them and not just, turning into gossip. Then after one-on-ones, one of the next super practical things is delegation. Delegation, I spoke about this a little bit earlier, but it's just, I think this is such an underrated skill. Like, I think managers never quite learn fully delegation, and I might have to do a full episode on delegation at some point, because I think it is one of like the skills over the years that I would say I've honed to the point where it's like one of my most powerful skills, is using delegation as a way to inspire people. I think a lot of us tend to think we hand tasks off and it's going to annoy people, it's going to piss them off because they've got more to do and they've already got so much to do. But using the frameworks above, things like one-on-ones, so you can find out if they're annoyed, using the roles and responsibilities docs for clarity, so if we are giving them too much, we can remove things. Delegation then is just another wonderful piece of the puzzle to say, actually, you have skills here, so I'm going to grow your skills by delegating this thing to you, and then we can, if it's too much, we can remove something else that's less of a priority. Delegation, I'm not going to tell you every corner of delegation right now. I'm going to do a separate episode, or actually I've got a YouTube video on delegation that's brilliant. If you want to go over to Leadership Heather YouTube, go watch that. But for the purpose of today, the most important thing to know about delegation is see it as an investment of your time. You are buying back your time in the future, and use the context and purpose. Take as much time as you need to explain the purpose and the context of delegation to your team members so that they can connect it to the bigger picture. They can take some ownership and accountability then of how they actually want to do that, like put that task into place. Then the final thing that I wish someone had said to me is holding people accountable is tough, as in like holding standards. You know, if someone drops below the line, drops a standard, and you have to hold them accountable, it is tough. It can feel tough because it feels like, you know, that's at the point where you're like putting your foot down. This is the job. And holding people accountable is kind. Holding people to high standards is kind. The moment that you let those standards slip, whether it's by allowing others to let their standards slip or your own standards slip in, is the moment you kind of signal, okay, we tolerate this now. Like your team will do as you do, they won't do as you say. And so accountability, holding people accountable. And if accountability feels hard right now, just default to questions, ask questions. That's what I always say. If someone's dropped the mark with a KPI, if someone's dropped the mark with a standard, ask them questions. How are we going to make sure this doesn't happen again? How are we going to make sure that this is up to standard next time? Because I see accountability as almost like this physical thing where at the minute I have it and I want to pass it over to someone else. So if I want someone else to be accountable, I need to hold them accountable using my questions instead of telling them what to do. And I think accountability is one of the most complex parts of management. You could Google any of the other topics we've been talking about today, like feedback and, one-on-ones, and you could find other thoughts on it. Accountability is one that not many people have dug into yet because not many people have got it right. It's a really tough one, and I think it is like, I never like to say the word expert with leadership, but if there was any time to say it, it would be now. Like, to become an expert in leadership, it's knowing how and when to properly hold your team accountable, because a lot of us, we love to give people slack and we love to, drop our standards because it just feels easier and more comfortable in the moment. So accountability is a tough one, but it's something we have to, as a new manager, as a fresh manager, or someone who wants a refresher, just get so good at. So I'm going to leave it there. Honestly, I could go on for hours and hours about things I wish that I knew that I could just slap 19-year-old me around the face with, but I'm going to leave it there. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? What do you wish someone could tell you as a new manager? Like, what is that one bit of advice that you've maybe heard that's really helped? Because I know there's going to be lots of brand new managers listening to this, and we can all learn from each other in the comments. So let me know. And as always, if you're not subscribed, if you're not following along, please follow along. It means the world to us. Thank you so much.